Dan Mullen doing what has been expected of him since he took the job there at Florida, coaching up the team on the field and off the field in regards to making inroads on the recruiting trail in the state of Florida. We bring in Jackie Franchuli. She writes for Gators Territory on the Rivals platform for the University of Florida. Jackie, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing just fine, and thank you so much. I know what the grind is like, covering a particular football team and tracking all the stories and all the storylines and the social media feeds of the various candidates and prospects and trying to work storylines and get the right information. And this is just one of those days that you go throughout the year that obviously you've got deadlines and things going on. So I appreciate you kind of putting things at a halt for 10 or 15 minutes to give us a breakdown on Florida's day here.
Yeah, no problem, Mark. Thanks for having me today.
Definitely. So I mentioned it as soon as we got on the phone before we started to record that the pinnacle of the day seemed to be when the Lakeland Three all had various team lists of their top 4 or 5 schools, all included Florida. And then as they fell one by one, once we got to the third one, I think I had seen the trend and saw what was going to play out there. But obviously that was a big coup for Dan Mullen and his staff.
No, it was definitely their very big win for Florida. They really needed that to make early signing day such a success for them, in all honesty. I think if they were to miss those 3 from Lakeland, it would have been a different story that we'll be talking about today. So that was a very big get. You know, Dan Mullen and his staff, when they arrived here, they said they wanted to kind of dominate Central Florida. They wanted to dominate the 5-6 hour radius around Gainesville. He even reiterated today in this press conference that he kind of drew a circle around Gainesville and then did their 5 and 6 hour radius because that's the area that he wanted to dominate in recruiting. And Lakeland is a very big powerhouse that they need to have a pipeline in. You know, obviously there's a lot of, Lakeland players connected to success at Florida, the Pouncey twins, Ahmad Black. So they wanted to have that pipeline again, which they haven't been able to establish in a couple of years. And this is a great way to doing it with 3 very talented players. I think, obviously, Keon Zipperer is such a talented tight end. I think he's one of the best recruits in this class. And taking him away not only from, powerhouses like Clemson and Alabama, who are all recruiting him, but teams like Miami, because this was really a battle between Miami and Florida, and beating an in-state school like that is huge for them. So by them beating Miami, you're beating an in-state school, you're recruiting rival. So that was huge for Mullen and company, because this is only their first real early signing day. Yes, they had one last year, but this is the first time they were really involved in the process from the beginning. They were able to beat one of their in-state rivals. And then obviously, David Hammond, they really need to reinforce that offensive line. They have a lot of guys who are going to either graduate, and possibly Juwan Taylor might go to the NFL draft. So they really need to have linemen so they can fill up those gaps that are going to be left after this year. And that's why they got so many linemen in this class. And having Hammond there as a guy that they look to possibly maybe contribute a little earlier is a good get for Florida. And obviously, Lloyd Summerall, that's a position of need as well, defensive end. Obviously, this is a guy that has a lot of talent. I think he is one of the guys that will be more benefit in the weight room after a while. I think he's got a lot of length and is very explosive. But going through Nick Savage's program will really benefit him as well. And I think that's the type of guy that Todd Grantham's going to really love to mold. And so, so it's a big win. Not only are you getting 3 talented playmakers in those guys, but you're also creating that pipeline. So, like they have a talented running back in Bowman in the next class. So there you go. They already have 3 teammates of his on the team. So it's already a starting point for next year.
We've got Jackie Franchuli on the line from Gators Territory, the Rivals platform for Florida football and Florida athletics. Jackie, we have a number of coaches that have obviously made it through Gainesville since Urban Meyer set that standard that was an extension of what Steve Spurrier established, and Jim McElwain and Will Muschamp not living up to the expectations of the fan base. Do you see any difference in regards to Dan Mullen's approach versus what was accomplished during the signing periods of Jim McElwain and Will Muschamp?
Yeah, I think what this staff, well, first and foremost, they went after kids that they needed as far as position wise. They kind of honed in on, okay, let's focus in on the offensive line. We need to build a foundation in the line of scrimmage. We understand that that is our weakest point, so we're going to attack it and attack it strongly. And I think that's what sometimes the former staff members did not do as efficiently. I think that's something that this staff has done very well, is identify their problem areas and recruit heavily those areas, which is seen by the offensive linemen that they got, and also getting offensive linemen that can enroll early and then participate in spring. So that is a big key, what this staff has done very well in. And also, you know, you heard from those Lakeland guys, and what they said was the reason why they chose Florida. Keon Zipperer, for instance, said that the reason why he chose Florida over Miami was that family atmosphere. And actually, that's the one thing that Mullen talked about in his press conference, is that he's been trying to kind of change the atmosphere, not make it fake. You know how it's a cliche, kids always say, I feel like a family, I feel like home in a school.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that Mullen has tried to do. And I actually did a story on Megan Mullen, and how she kind of helped him change the culture around Florida and what she brings to the table. And you know what, recruits really like the dynamic between Megan and her husband, Dan. They kind of create this mom and dad kind of feel when the kids, you know, Jalen Jones's mom, you know, I talked to her a little bit after she came with her son on the official visit 2 weeks ago. And she was saying that it was great having Megan there. You know, and it's one of the reasons why Jalen's commitment kind of followed the Mullins. You know, he was committed to Mississippi State. Mullins left. He decommitted, and he quickly committed again to Florida, although UVA was kind of trying to keep him home, and that was a school that offered him first. So it was really because of that Megan and Dan Mullen dynamic, and obviously the other coaches also follow their lead and kind of involve all the family members. And I think that's what's changed. I think it's everyone's kind of involved with each other, the players as well. And when you're dealing with parents, and they're babies, moms are going to leave their babies in some other's hands. You know, it's a big difference. You saw how Florida caused a stir when Lloyd Summerall's dad was just patted up and in front and taking pictures. That's a very big difference. I know it might not seem a lot. You know, some people might say, oh, it's just, you know, Dan's wife, you know, participating, but that's huge. You know, if you're a single mom and you have a child that's going to be 5-6 hours away from you, having a mom on campus like that is huge for any mother who's trying to decide or trying to help her son decide. So that, I think that's the biggest difference that I've seen from this staff as well. Not only are they being efficient on who they're going after, but when they are going after, they're realizing how to sell the program in not a fake way, if that makes sense.
Interesting. That's why we have you on here, Jackie, to give us that kind of insight, because you don't get that just anywhere. So that's really good stuff there, and definitely a distinction. Another distinction I think that lies solely in the SEC Eastern Division, because I'm scanning the conferences and the divisions in the Power Five, is this network of rivalries, not just within the division, but then outside, extending to the ACC for the Georgias and Floridas and South Carolinas into the ACC and Kentucky as well. And for Florida, obviously, this being the recruiting state in the nation, along with Texas and California, you have that direct comparison to Georgia, and obviously they are lighting it on fire. You have the Florida State and Miami triumvirate that seems to be in favor of Florida right now. Florida State had a decent day and should bring in a roughly top 15 class. Miami's somewhat imploding. How much is the Gator fan base keeping an eye on chief rivals in all directions?
Well, it's yes. Florida fan bases are going to, you know, I just reading through our rivals message boards, you can see they're trying to follow. Obviously, you want to follow Georgia's recruitment because that will really help you kind of map out how the SEC East outlook is, because that's the team you need to beat in order to go back to the SEC championship game, which is obviously what Florida wants to do. They want to go back to Atlanta because then they will be competing for a college playoff spot. So obviously that's something that they need to look at because Georgia is a direct competitor. Now, obviously, when you're in the state of Florida, you know some of the best talent in the country is in the Sunshine State. So you're directly competing against the Florida States and Miami just because of geography. So, yes, of course, fans are going to look at that, and they're going to be smiling when they look at Miami. that program is having a lot of issues. I think the last time I checked their rankings, they're in the top 50. I think they're 43rd right now, last time I checked. So obviously they've got some problems. And then Florida State has not signed a quarterback yet. They didn't sign one in last year's class. So that is a problem that Willie Taggart's going to face. And then you go to Florida, and they signed 20 kids today. And 10 of them are going to early enroll. So when you're a Florida fan, you think, okay, in the Sunshine State, we're moving in the right direction. We're beating our in-state rivals very well. Now, obviously, when you look at the SEC, you're still not quite there where you want to be. But then you have to look at what Mullen and staff have done, and is, like I said, picked out some good offensive linemen to build that foundation, gone out and got some very good linebackers. I think this is a very strong linebacker group that Mullen was able to bring in with like Christian Robinson, their linebackers coach, kind of heading up their recruitment. I think Tyron Hopper, it was a big get for Florida. They actually beat out South Carolina for him, because Tyron Hopper has been committed for a while to Florida, but South Carolina came in the last few weeks and was trying to flip Hopper away. And it was actually something that we were monitoring pretty closely. But Robinson and Florida were able to shut that down and keep Hopper at Florida. So I think that was a huge get for them, because Hopper is one of those defenders that's so versatile in his high school career, playing so many different positions. So he has definitely a lot of upside, and it's a position where Florida has under-recruited in the last few years. So having a talent like Tyron Hopper there is definitely something that you can consider Florida a win this class. So I think Florida fans get a bad rap, but a lot of them are very rational during this early signing day. I've seen a lot of people say, well, at least we missed on, let's say, Troy Sanders, but we got the 3 Lakeland kids, and also we've got some kids, some big recruits for positions that we look at our depth chart and we really do need in order to build a foundation to move forward. I think that's the key there, is that a lot of fans do see that they are moving forward in several positions. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of them are, fans are also looking at the gaps that they need. They definitely need to look at DB, especially at safety. And they also need to get defensive tackles. They missed out on the kid from Utah who decided to sign to LSU. Florida, to be fair, went in a little bit late with him. Did a spectacular job just to be in the conversation, but ended up LSU kind of inching away in the last few hours here for that signature. But that's something that they need to focus on, is DL and DB. And, it's going to be tough because, obviously the way early signing day works, the pool is a lot smaller for National Signing Day, but Florida is in good hands with a lot of kids. Chris Steele did not sign today, but he's announcing in January it's early enrolling. I still feel that Florida is the favorite to land that 5-star. So this class could still be something where, Florida signs some very highly talented players come National Signing Day with a 5-star in the mix. So I think Florida fans aren't, jumping off ledges or anything like that, because they understand that there's still another National Signing Day as well.
Yeah, so basically the ultimate goal is to win the East and get to the championship game, and then obviously you're playing for a college football playoff berth and to win the best conference in college football. I also find it funny that fans at times seem to look at these rankings as though they are actually games that have been played on the field, and those are tangible results. There is certainly a likelihood that the number 17 class in the nation turns out to be better than the number 12 class in the nation, and so forth. They're not direct correlation to what the result will be on the field. It's a strong indicator. There's no question about that. All we have to do is look at the national rankings at the end of each season and see the correlation to the recruiting rankings. But you can have a top 5 class that doesn't turn out, and you're not developing them. Butch Jones certainly showed us that at Tennessee. And then you can have a number 15 class that you coach and developed into a championship team in the SEC. Obviously, if you stay within certain parameters and you trust your coaching staff to coach and develop, and that they were eyeing the right fits for their program and their team, then you can certainly rest on a balance between the recruiting rankings and the development of the staff and their ability to create the right fits. All right, we got Jackie Franchuli on the line for Gators Territory. Jackie, we appreciate you stopping by and giving us perspective on this Florida recruiting class.
No, thanks for having me, Mark. It was a fun day, and let's do this again in February.